How a West Side drug bust led the feds to El Chapo. This is the inside story of how the feds went from the streets of Chicago to the mountaintops of Mexico to make the case against Sinaloa cartel kingpin Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. You know, when you got a name as big as Chapo, it's like they find a way, everybody finds a way to attach themselves to that name. Christopher Westside Baines. One of the biggest drug investigations in history began in Chicago with less than 2 ounces of heroin. On a hot summer day in 2007, a West suburban drug dealer named Christopher Baines sold a plastic baggie containing 50 grams of the brown, powdery stuff to a government informant near Cicero and Chicago Avenue on the Chicago's west side. It's not far from here at all. It was a modest street-level deal. The buyer paid Baines $5,000. After 3 more sales to informants, Baines was busted for drug trafficking. Cases like these happen all the time in Chicago. Only this time, it ended up leading to Mexican drug kingpin Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán Loera, the world's most wanted criminal. Court records in Chicago, sometimes interviews with key players in the investigation show. The arrest of El Chapo by Mexican Marines near the coastal city of Los Mochis in Sinaloa in January 2016 already is the stuff of legend. With his unsuccessful escape through stinking sewers following a series of failed raids on his properties, one of them after a clandestine meeting with actor Sean Penn, ratted him out. Sean Penn ratted him out, man. We know the truth. Authorities have never revealed that the case against the man who some believe was the biggest drug kingpin in the world began with Baines, a mid-level dealer whose father owned a grocery store in Austin and also drove a bus for the CTA. His father sounds like a hard-working man. But a Sun-Times review of court records and interviews with Baines and others involved in the case, including a key former federal prosecutor, has found that a Drug Enforcement Administration task force used a web of informants and hundreds of wiretapped calls to trace a path that ultimately led from Baines to El Chapo. So you mean to tell me the twins called you and said, "Hey man, we're gonna flip and we're gonna give you what you need," right? They handed you everything. Then they did all the work and they did it on their own, right? But y'all already had an investigation that was leading up that way. But authorities have never revealed that the case against the man whom some believe was the biggest drug kingpin in the world began with Baines. It kind of feels to me like the feds needed to make it look like they were onto something, being that they got something tied up in a bow and handed to them. Y'all tell me if I'm crazy. I don't know. That's just how it feels to me. But again, y'all know I'm a cynic first. And then, I'll deduct what I feel at the end of it. We went from the streets of Chicago to the mountaintops of Mexico, says Thomas Shakeshaft, a former assistant U.S. attorney who supervised each phase of the investigation. We started a case against the traveling vice lords on the west side of Chicago and went all the way up. Before Penn flew down to Mexico with actress Kate del Castillo, Traffic with Love, and recorded this thing where Chapo admitted he was the largest drug trafficker in the world, we had the only legally admissible voice recording of Chapo in the world. Okay. All right. Shakeshaft credits a combination of hard work, the resources of the U.S. government, and luck. The El Chapo case was the highlight of Shakeshaft's career as a prosecutor, and it exacted an enormous toll. He says the pressure of keeping witnesses alive, which seems like they didn't have much pressure, man. They seemed like they didn't give a shit half the time. He says the pressure of keeping witnesses alive while overseeing an international drug investigation drove him to drink and led to a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder, which eventually killed him. In Baines' case, he says sparked all of it. All right, we're going to see. I hope they got a good explanation, because to me it sounds like they just looking to not look like they had Chapo handed to them with a bow. That's what it looks like. There goes your boy Thomas Shakeshaft right there. Rest in peace. The initial buy. Once listed by Fortune magazine on its roster of billionaires, El Chapo had been charged in 1995 with drug conspiracy in San Diego. But the Chicago investigation led to some of the most damaging evidence against the security-obsessed drug lord. A recording of Guzman negotiating a deal, according to Shake Shack and high-level government officials. El Chapo was indicted in Chicago in 2009. At the time, federal prosecutors said he exported tons of drugs to the United States via ships and submarines and 747s. That case sprang from the 13-month investigation that led to Baines' arrest, according to Shake Shack. Chris Baines was known to DEA as a traveling vice lord. Not necessarily a full-on member of the gang. Well, then he wasn't a traveling vice lord, bro. Chris Baines was known to DEA as a traveling vice lord. Not necessarily a full-on member of the gang, but he was a significant narcotics trafficker on the west side and lived in Maywood, Shake Shack says. And like a lot of these cases, DEA got started looking at somebody that they know about. And the case agent had a cooperating source who could buy into Baines. And that's how we work things. That's how we work these things. The first buy was on July 3rd, 2007. Baines and his cousin, Charles Parker, sold 50 grams of heroin, less than a cup, to a man with a disturbing rap sheet, including an arrest for murder. The customer was paid at least $3,500 by the DEA to be an informant against Baines, court records show. So they ain't got no qualms about using dudes with murder on their jacket. They ain't got no problem giving them $3,500 to be a rat though. That's my point. Like, they play this holier than thou shit, and it's like, come on, man. You willing to give anybody the money to get the next guy, and then give him whatever money to get the next guy? It's all bullshit. The informant hopped in Baines' Chevy Tahoe outside a currency exchange in Maywood. After paying Baines $5,000 in money provided by investigators, the informant drove to a home near Cicero on Chicago Avenue on the west side, where Baines' cousin got in the car and placed the drugs in the cup holder, records show. Baines, known as Westside, offered to put him on his team of dealers, the informant told the DEA. Baines and his associates sold similar amounts of heroin to informants 3 other times, records show. In July 2008, a DEA task force, federal agents, Chicago Police Department investigators, and members of other law enforcement agencies arrested Baines. Y'all needed that many people for 50 grams? But y'all want to tell me that this dude's connected to the top? Okay. I'm still with you. I'm looking for the reason why they connected to the top. Let's see. He wouldn't talk, but one of his friends, a higher level dealer named Michael Fat Mike King, agreed to cooperate. King's suppliers were Pedro, Peter, Flores, and Margarito Jr. Flores. Okay, there you go. His plug was plugged to the twins. So Baines' plug was Fat Mike. And Fat Mike, and it might not have been Baines' plug, but I'm thinking it is. It's saying a higher level dealer. And his plug was the twins, so that makes sense. King suppliers were Pedro, Peter Flores, and Margarito Jr. Flores, identical twin brothers who grew up in Chicago's little village but moved to Mexico, shipping tons of drugs back to Chicago. Court records examined by the Sun-Times show. The twins agreed to cooperate with the U.S. investigators in late 2008, court records show. And Pedro Flores recorded a damning phone conversation with his supplier, El Chapo. The recording became the key evidence in the 2009 federal indictment filed in the U.S. District Court in Chicago. Guzman and dozens of underlings were charged with running a criminal enterprise that exported billions of dollars of cocaine and heroin to Chicago and other U.S. cities, according to the indictment. In early 2016, El Chapo was extradited to New York, where he's being held awaiting trial set for September. The charges against him in the Chicago indictment have been rolled into the monumental case against him to be heard in Brooklyn. The case involves hundreds of thousands of documents and thousands of hours of secret recordings. So I guess it wasn't the twins weren't the only ones recording them. Evidently. From church usher to dealer. So that's the connection. The connection is that they hit Buddy for 50 grams. His connect ratted him out. How did they even get to the Fat Mike guy? I don't know. I'm gonna look into it. We'll see. So you salutes Ian Heslip in the chat. Salutes Hunters for you, bro. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Make sure you hit the like button. We're hanging out. Salute. In a series of emails and phone conversations from prison in Ohio, where he's doing a 20-year sentence, Baines, 44, who was once a youth usher in church, talked about his middle-class background, his involvement with drugs, and his unwitting role in the investigation of El Chapo. His parents owned a grocery and liquor store near Columbus Park in Austin, and the family also lived in that West Side neighborhood. His late father also drove a Chicago Transit Authority bus, working the night shift. The family moved to Maywood when Christopher was 5. Boy, Daddy was trying to get that paper. In the late 1980s, Baines' older brothers got shot to death within a year of each other, and Baines' best friend also was killed. Baines was 14. It wasn't the same when I lost my best friend and my 2 brothers, he said. Baines said he wasn't a good student, but managed to graduate from St. Joseph High School in Westchester, where he was a classmate of basketball player William Gates and Arthur Agee, who were featured in the acclaimed Hoop Dreams. He said he got a job at Riverside Mall in the suburbs and also worked for a couple of months at the Melrose Park Post Office. His parents tried to keep him away from the streets and the life that claimed his brothers, he said. In 1991, he was gassing up his car in Maywood when a man came up and asked for an 8-ball. Street lingo for an eighth of an ounce of cocaine. Baines said he'd never dealt drugs before, but he agreed to the deal for $150, then drove 10 minutes to the west side and met with a drug dealer who'd been a friend of one of his brothers. He said, no. He said, no, I'm not gonna get in trouble with your dad, Baines said. But I said, he'll never know. He said, okay, just bring me back $125. I met the guy in Maywood and made $25 in no time. Before you knew it, I was selling 10 8-balls a day, then 100, and on and on. Still, Baines said he moved downstate to Bloomington, planning to attend a junior college, then go to Illinois State University, but that never happened. In 1992, he was arrested in Bloomington on charges of supervising 20 people selling crack cocaine. He was sentenced to 18 years in state prison for being the ringleader of a gang-related drug conspiracy that netted up to $10,000 a week. He was 19 years old. In prison, Baines said he learned to be a barber. After he got out in 2002, he cut hair at Adams Barbershop at Madison and Laramie on the west side. I was making $1,000 a week when cuts were just $12 each. My parents were proud of me. I can cut all races in any style. I'm very fast and accurate. All of his pals would come in to see him at the popular barbershop, he said. So it was only a matter of time before I got into the game. He supplied heroin and cocaine to lower level dealers who sold drugs to gangs on the west side. He said his middle class upbringing set him apart. Most street guys that are in gangs are idiots, and they can only get so far. There's a truth in that. And they'll be the ones that get upset about that line. You know what I'm saying? But there's a truth in that. I've never got involved in gang activity and never hung with gangbangers. Baines said he lived with his parents during his year after he left prison in 2002. Then he bought a house in Naperville, but would stop by to see his parents, bringing them groceries and shoveling the snow for them. In the meantime, he built up his network. Parker, the cousin involved in the July 3rd, 2007 buy that federal authorities arranged, and another cousin, Craig Smith, sold drugs for Baines, court records show. Smith, a heroin addict, tested the product, giving a thumbs up when he thought customers would approve, the record shows. Yeah, he had a whole dope fiend on his team. They're everywhere. They're on everybody's team. A lot of people do not live by the don't get high on your own supply mentality. There's a whole lot that don't give a shit. They just want to be high. And then once they're in, then it's too late. Then they stuck. Even though Baines was arrested for selling small amounts of drugs to informants, 334 grams between July and December 2007, authorities said he was a mid-level dealer. He agrees, admitting he bought from several major connects who supplied him with dozens of kilos of cocaine and several kilos of heroin at a time. The Fat Mike connection. I wonder if that's Fat Mike. He looks like a Fat Mike. One of his good friends was King, the trafficker known as Fat Mike, who weighed over 300 pounds and owned homes in upscale neighborhoods around Chicago, on the Gold Coast, and in Country Club Hills, Willow Springs, and Orland Park. Court records show King's homes were outfitted with concealed compartments in the walls where he'd hide drugs and cash. A 100-kilogram cocaine deal was no big deal for King, according to prosecutors, who said he got his drugs directly from the Flores twins in Mexico. Baines and Fat Mike rode Harleys together and ate at places like Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Baines said he didn't want to do business with his good friends, so he went through an associate of King, but the relationship was rocky from the start. Baines said the supplier, whom he would not identify, bought directly from the twins. My first order was 25 keys, he said. I paid in 3 days, but he only gave me 12. That's the game right there. Later, when a shipment of 35 kilos of cocaine and 2 kilos of heroin didn't show up, Baines said he and his girlfriend flew to Cancun, Mexico, where the 6-foot-tall Baines met the 5'4" Peter Flores in early 2007. He told us about a nice newer hotel to stay at, so we stayed there along with his family. Baines said, he knocked on the door of my hotel room and I went to answer it. He was so short. I looked down and said to him, damn, you a funny looking motherfucker. Is that how you say? That's the first thing you say to somebody that you want to come get something from? Like, that's why I don't believe these fucking stories. And if the stories do be real, then y'all be dumb as fuck. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not how you do business. You don't just walk in and tell a motherfucker what you thinking. It's crazy to me. You a funny looking motherfucker. He was like, man, fuck you. We got along fine after that. Like, why would you even come in and create that type of, that type of shit's like, bro, this is how you start the relationship. You come in talking shit. I'd have been like, your mother looks funny. You come in to me to connect. You want to get a straight line. You want this dude to like you. The first thing you do is say something stupid when you walk through the door. That just lets me know that you're a liability, if you ask me. Mind you, I don't need to have meetings with you, but if that's how you're going to walk into every meeting I take you with, you ain't coming to no meetings with me. Because you're going to piss off the wrong dude, and that's going to create an issue. Baines said he learned that his Chicago supplier was cheating him, and he started dealing directly with Peter Flores. That didn't last. Baines said he accepted a few multi-kilogram loads of drugs from the twins, but stopped dealing with them in February 2007 because they were delivering low-quality cocaine and heroin, which were tough to move in Chicago. I wonder if their quality fell in the midst of them getting out the game. I wonder if their standards fell, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you got jokes at the door? Cool, take this trash. Or were they just giving the good fish scale all the way to the end? Because they were delivering low quality cocaine and heroin, which were tough to move in Chicago. And I just didn't trust them, said Baines, who didn't like that Peter Flores talked openly about his other customers. According to court records, Baines also was buying heroin from Emiterio Gutierrez, whose family founded the popular but now closed Mexican restaurant Nuevo Leon on 18th Street in Pilsen. Gutierrez had worked in the restaurant and his mother's store before he started Bubbles Auto Spa in Cicero, where he met a cast of characters who introduced him to the drug business, according to court records. Emiterio Gutierrez was not my main connect, Baines said. Still, when authorities approached Gutierrez, he agreed to cooperate against Baines. Gutierrez and Baines' courier, Christine Burgos, testified Baines was buying about 1 kilogram a week from Gutierrez in 2005 and 2006 and about 2 kilograms a month in 2007. So you worried about not trusting the twins, and Buddy turned you and dimed you out. Baines incriminated himself. Court records show in hundreds of wiretap calls in which he plotted drug deals and bragged he made 25 grand a month and drove a silver Corvette. Running your mouth. In July 2008, Baines and his network, Gutierrez, Burgos, Smith, and Parker, were charged with drug conspiracy. All pleaded guilty. Gutierrez got 9 years in prison, Smith 6 years, Parker 5 years, Burgos just got a day in jail. What? Equality where? A day in jail? What did she give up? She had to give up all kind of shit. She probably gave them all up. They probably started with her. She was a courier. How you get 1 day? 1 day? 1 day? Gutierrez got 9 years in prison, Smith 6 years, and Parker 5 years. Burgos just got 1 day in jail. U.S. District Judge Rebecca Palmyre hammered Baines with a 20-year prison sentence. There's no doubt in my mind that you were dealing in very substantial quantities of a drug that is dangerous and that destroys the fabric of our community and makes Chicago not a nice place to be. Poverty does that, Palmyre told Baines at his sentencing in 2024. Baines said he got screwed for refusing to cooperate. In his plea agreement, Baines admitted to 4 heroin deals that ranged from 29 to 165 grams, totaling 334 grams. Those were the sales to informants. At his sentencing, though, prosecutors presented evidence Baines sold at least 30 kilograms of heroin as well as cocaine. Anytime you don't cooperate with the feds, they throw everything at you. Shit. From what we've learned on this story is every time you do cooperate with the feds, they throw everything at you. Make your decisions wisely. Shake Shack, who prosecuted him, said if you cooperate, you have the potential to gain a benefit. Working up the chain. Baines occupied one of the lower rungs in Chicago's drug supply chain, but information from wiretaps and informants in his case led investigators up the ladder, record shows. Fat Mike King was a much bigger fish, and authorities quickly set their hooks in him. Unfortunately for King, one of the biggest customers became a snitch for the DEA. One of his biggest customers became a snitch for the DEA. The informant, who lived in Lexington, Kentucky, revealed that he and King had flown to the resort city of Puerto Vallarta, Mexico in 2006 to meet with King's supplier, the Flores twins. So basically, the feds just kept knocking down these mid-level dealers, and the road kept leading to the Flores twins. They're in Mexico already. Y'all ain't got to look no further than the case that they got in Milwaukee. So I don't even know, they had the case in Milwaukee when they ran to Mexico. So I don't even know what the DEA is really looking for at this point. You know who they are. You know what they do. It is what it is. How you get 1 day, though? 1 day, Christine Burgos? Goddamn. In 2008, the informant agreed to cooperate with investigators. Of course he did. He got King making incriminating statements on secretly recorded calls. In one, the informant spoke to King about a 5-kilo cocaine deal. The informant said he sent a courier to Chicago with $120,000 to pay King for the drugs, but he said police officers stopped this courier in a car outside Louisville, Kentucky for doing 62 miles an hour in a 55 and took the money. Yeah, you got yapped. It was all a lie aimed at getting King to talk about the twins, but it got King worried because he was planning to pay Peter Flores with that money. King called Flores, whom he referred to as Slowpoke, about what the informant told him. Then, he called the informant back. According to a transcript, King said of Peter Flores, he ain't mad. King also warned the informant that Flores was worried someone in King's organization was cooperating with investigators, not knowing it was the informant. It was the informant. The transcript of another call on June 22, 2008 reads like the goofy script of a Quentin Tarantino movie. This guy doesn't like Quentin Tarantino movies? What are you talking about, bro? You're not a Reservoir Dogs fan? How dare you? King told the informant, I'm gonna buy me some motherfucking patio furniture. Patio furniture for your house? The informant asked, incredulous. Hell yeah, man, King responded. Sit out there like them white people. Get me a TV out there. It's roomy. I can get 5-6 people in there real comfortable. What does that even have to do with the article or the story? That ain't got shit to do with it. I'm trying to see here. So boom, they hit the informant for the money that he was supposedly supposed to give to Peter. Coppers hit him for the money. It's all bullshit. They just want King under pressure. He called Peter, then he called the informant back and told him he ain't mad. And he also warned him that Flores was worried someone in the organization. So Peter's telling him, you got a rat in your situation. And he's relaying that information right back to the rat. Okay, you caught a couple of guys that said their connect was the twins. So what? Y'all didn't have nothing on Chapo, whose name you threw all over this article. You didn't have nothing on him until they gave it to you. So like, what are we talking about here? Soon King's suburban bliss would end. Presented with the evidence against him, he too agreed to cooperate, court records show. King never went to prison. Suffering from diabetes and other medical problems, he died of natural causes before the case against him was resolved. The informant, who admitted receiving up to 100 kilograms of cocaine a month from King between 1999 and 2008, pleaded guilty to drug conspiracy. He got 96 months in prison. That's more than 1 day. Old girl got 1 day. How you get 1 day? I'm sure they were in a lot of people's cases, and a lot of rats threw their name up in the air. It's quite possible. The Flores twins were in investigators' sights. The brothers, sons of a Mexican drug dealer who lived in Little Village, had become the most prolific drug suppliers in the city's history, according to prosecutors. By the summer of 2003, they were moving 2 tons of cocaine a month from Mexico to Chicago, which became a major distribution hub, and moving more than $2 billion in cash to Mexico in less than 3 years. They'd been indicted in Milwaukee. They'd been indicted in Milwaukee in 2005 on charges of selling more than 5 kilograms of cocaine. But no one knew the extent of the twins' operations until the Chicago Task Force investigation that began in 2007. My question is, did the twins begin that investigation, or did the United States government begin that investigation? El Chapo had met several times with the brothers, and in 2008 warned them to buy drugs only from him and stop doing business with the Beltran Labor Organization, his enemies. On November 6, 2008, they chose a third option. The Chicago Task Force was investigating, supposedly. To me, this all sounds like a bunch of after the fact. They tied up Chapo for us in a nice little bow. After the fact, let's say how we were on their ass and they had to come to us, you know. U.S. authorities, including Shake Shack and DEA agents, secretly met with the brothers at a hotel in Monterrey, Mexico. They agreed to inform on Chapo. Again, they initiated all that. They called you, stop by, let's have a cup of tea and talk this shit. So they initiated that. It's not like y'all went and y'all got them or y'all were on their ass or they was worried about y'all. They weren't worried about y'all. They were worried about the cartel crumbling on top of them. They ended up recording more than 70 phone conversations with Guzmán. The most important call was on November 15, 2008, when Peter Flores spoke with him. Flores was at his home in Guadalajara. El Chapo was in hiding somewhere in Mexico. Amigo! Nice talking to you, El Chapo said, according to the transcript of the call. How's your brother? Flores bargained the price of 20 kilograms of heroin down from $55,000 a kilo to $50,000. That price is fine, Chapo finally said. With that, prosecutors had their first direct evidence of El Chapo negotiating a drug deal, said Shake Shack, calling it the case of a lifetime. In 2015, the Flores brothers, with their boyish looks and crew cuts looking more like Boy Scouts than drug dealers, were sentenced to 14 years in prison by U.S. District Judge Ruben Castillo, who warned them they'd always have to be looking over their shoulder for El Chapo's assassins. The judge said he was giving them a huge break because of their extraordinary cooperation against El Chapo. Really? The brothers are expected to be the star witnesses against him. Though he'd been unaware of his role in the investigation that ended up landing the twins and El Chapo, Baines said it doesn't surprise him. It's a small world. Bro, you had shit to do with this story. Nothing. It's like they threw him up there to be the face, some kind of face for them for this story, like they were doing something. There's no connection between him and them. This just to me looks like the feds trying to make it seem like they were onto something. I don't think they were onto shit.
So this is Frank Main, and I'm interviewing Chris Baines, and Chris is in a federal prison in Ohio. He's serving a prison sentence on a drug conviction, and the story that we are doing is about how his case led federal prosecutors up the supply chain to eventually prosecute Chapo Guzman. And I just wanted to ask you, Chris, a few questions about your case.
Think about what he just said. That's a huge stretch right there. That's a giant stretch. It eventually worked its way up the supply chain to El Chapo. Stop it.
The supply chain to about how his case led federal prosecutors up the supply chain to eventually prosecute Chapo Guzman. And I just wanted to ask you, Chris, a few questions about your case. And the first one is when did you learn about the identity of Chapo Guzman? When's the first time that you ever heard of El Chapo?
It has to be around 2002 or 3. I heard about the big guy over there. He's supposed to be like the next Pablo Escobar or whatever.
In your business, which was totally based in Chicago, did you ever envision that you would one day have connection with people who were his major suppliers, the Margarito and Pedro Flores, who were called the twins, and are also convicted on a drug conspiracy charge?
Well, you cross paths with certain people that you might know who deal with somebody. It's a small world, so it really didn't surprise me if I did. It didn't surprise me if I did. It really wasn't a big deal. As long as I got what I wanted and did what I wanted to do. I was never the type of groupie guy because somebody has, contacts to get a certain amount.
So my question is, does it surprise you that your relatively small case according to prosecutors, led them up the ladder to the twins and eventually to prosecuting El Chapo? In other words, they say there's
This call is from a federal prison.
They say there's a straight line between your case and the Chicago indictment against Chapo.
Basically, I should never had been in the category as them.
Well, that's the truth right there. He said I should have never been in that category. Basically, I should have never been in a category with them. Okay, we'll be in agreement with that, right? Why does the news and the courts and everybody seem to think that this guy getting popped was the beginning of the end for them? That's what I don't understand. The same way they accused the chain story, 50 Cent doing the chain story for publicity and for confusion's sake, that's what this seems like. Agent Toy said, are you wearing Hecho Mexico shirt? Nah, bruh. Almost.
Basically, I should never had been in the category as them. Obvious, they was more responsible for the multitude of drugs coming into the city.
You think?
From the city. So I wasn't bringing it over. You know what I mean?
Why did you not cooperate with the feds when they had you?
Cooperation was never in my vocabulary. I don't agree with setting somebody up or cooperating to get somebody else in trouble who might not even be in trouble. And I'm totally against it. Because when all this is over, I can go downtown to Beckletown Fountain, take a picture at 11 o'clock at night. I don't have to worry about who's going to put a bullet in the back of my head. I can feel comfortable after this, knowing I didn't get anyone in any trouble.
So the twins, who were Chapo's biggest customers in the United States, only got 14 years in prison because of their cooperation. You wound up with 20 years in prison. You've said that you thought that was an unfair sentence. Why do you think that?
Well, I only technically have 300 grams of heroin on my case total.
Yeah, bruh. If they had 3 people that they got work from, one of them was coming from the twins somehow, some way, some form. So everybody was the beginning line to all the way up the supply chain to Chapo. If that's how you want to talk about it.
Testimonies of other people to run my drug amount up to allow me to get 20 years.
You just got screwed, bruh.
Because they basically, I don't cooperate. They throw the book at me. They cooperate, and they had actual drugs from their cases, actual hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of keys, and they still only get 14 years.
I wouldn't say that he was important at the beginning, but
I would say he wasn't important at the beginning. He wasn't important in the middle. He wasn't important at the end. Y'all use this for publicity and for public relations.
I wouldn't say that he was important at the beginning, but he was the start of the whole thing. And Chris Baines was known to DEA as a traveling vice lord, not necessarily a full-on member of the big gang, but
so then he wasn't a traveling vice lord.
But he was a significant narcotics trafficker on the west side, lived in Maywood.
We read this transcript.
And like a lot of these cases, right, DEA got started looking at somebody that they know about. And the case agent had a cooperating source who could buy into Baines, and that's how we work these things, right? So he had a source who was able to buy into Baines and make a recorded phone call. And that got us up on a T3 wiretap on Baines's phone. And little did I know at the time that was going to be the beginning of an 8-year odyssey of going from Baines to Michael King to the Flores brothers in Mexico and then to Chapo. And that's, it's kind of law enforcement 101.
Bro,
that's what we do.
It sounds like law enforcement bullshit, bro. There's a big gap in the middle between them and the twins and Chapo, bro. And the United States government did not traverse that gap. The twins threw out the lasso and pulled them closer. That's how that works.
And that's, it's kind of law enforcement 101.
Bullshit.
That's what we do. We get the...
That's what we do.
I wouldn't say Chris Baines was low-hanging fruit. He was a mid-level, pretty significant drug trafficker. But that's the way we do it. And that's what we did in this case.
The Feds started out with Christopher Baines, and they quickly moved up the ladder. They wound up targeting Todd Howard, who is a big-time drug supplier in Kentucky, and he led...
Right, so now we got the name. They didn't give us the name in the article, but now we got the name. It was Todd Howard. He was the rat from Kentucky that Peter warned Fat Mike about, and Fat Mike called him and said, Peter said we might got a rat in the crew. Like, bro, you talking to him?
Them to the twins. Margaret, who is a big-time drug supplier in Kentucky, and he led them to the twins.
Led them? Led who? Who's them? Who showed up? Nobody showed up. That's why this is bullshit.
Margarito and Pedro Flores, who have been called the biggest drug dealers in Chicago history. In November 2008, Pedro Flores was at home when he called El Chapo, and they discussed a major drug deal.
That got nothing to do with Chris Baines, Fat Mike, Terrence Howard, or whatever his name is. Terrence Howard's going to save the world, for those that don't know. He figured out math is bullshit. None of that got to do with this phone call. None of that got to do with the twins reached out with nobody on their heels, no Apache helicopters coming to get them. They reached out, made it happen. This is public relations.
It was gold for prosecutors, but Pedro Flores risked his life by making that call. It was the first time that prosecutors caught El Chapo on audio making a drug deal. It became key evidence in the 2009 indictment against him in Chicago.
It was about 10 o'clock at night, November 10th, 2008. And the case agent, whose name I won't use, but he knows who he is, and I were in my office, the U.S. Attorney's office, and we got the recording from Mexico. It was an 8-kilo heroin deal at a Best Buy, at a Home Depot, about 9 miles, 10 miles due west of the Loop. And I remember taking the elevator down with the case agent, and he said, "We've got Chapo. Question now is whether we can get Mayo." And
I got the answer to that one for you. Hell no.
I don't want to say we were giddy, because we knew what we were dealing with.
Hollywood actor Sean Penn and Mexican actress Kate Del Castillo met El Chapo at a mountaintop hideout in September 2015. Sean Penn was working as a reporter for the Rolling Stone magazine at the time. In his story that was published in January 2016, he quoted El Chapo directly. He says, "I supply more heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and marijuana than anybody else in the world. I have a fleet of submarines, airplanes, trucks, and boats."
At the time, before Sean Penn flew down to Mexico with Kate Del Castillo and recorded this thing, and where Chapo admitted he was the largest drug trafficker in the world, we had the only legally admissible voice recording of Chapo in the world. We indicted 62 of the top level members of the Sinaloa cartel, and at the end of the day, we were 58 for 58. The only 4 guys that we didn't convict were guys who were either murdered in Mexico or were and remain fugitives. Chapo's one of them, Mayo's one of them, Chapo's kids. It's amazing we didn't make more mistakes, and it's amazing that more guys weren't killed on our watch. I'm the son of a guy who won the Silver Star in Battle of the Bulge. He's an incredibly moral man. My dad was my hero. It's one of the reasons I took this job, because I wanted to try to live up to him. And now I got diagnosed with PTSD. I woke up every day for 6.5 years, afraid that I was going to make a mistake that was going to get somebody killed. And, you only need to see somebody get decapitated with a chainsaw once, and it sticks with you. My refuge every day was 45 minutes in the Federale watering hole with the DEA and FBI agents I was working with. And, I didn't do myself any favors. And I own up to that. But I also did my job, So on the one hand, professionally, I did the right thing by our country. But on a personal level, it hasn't been easy.
What you didn't do was run an investigation from Chris Baines all the way to Chapo. That's what you didn't do.
I don't know how you put it. You know, I started drinking too much. So long as there's demand in this country, you know, it's not that complicated, right? Drugs come up from Colombia, come through Mexico, come to the United States, and money and guns go back. And so long as people continue to consume, you know, it starts with alcohol, but opiates, you know, the opiate epidemic, you know, big pharma. As long as people become and remain addicted to mood-altering substances,
That's it.
there are going to be people who are going to try to profit over it.
Right, but look, they show you a line on the west side or the south side of a bunch of dope fiends coming to get their work, right? But they don't tell you that himself and a million of them in offices all over the place, they're all on pills, they're all on powders, they're all on mind-altering substances. You know what I'm saying? But this is what they'll show you. This is the image they'll show you.
And that's where the cartels come in. You get people who are profiting off of addiction. All over the place. Rehab centers, the recovery community, you know.
People profiting over addiction. The police, the United States Attorney's Office. Y'all don't got a job without it.
Cartels.
Who you gonna chase? Or who you gonna not chase? Who you gonna let come to you and then you make up a story about how you chased them and you was about to get them, but then they came to you. Come on, man.
They're all feasting off of human misery.
They're all feasting off of human what? Human misery? Absolutely. Oh, that's a great quote. Mind you, the man died over the shit. You know, the man lost his life to alcohol and just being generally unhealthy.